everyone, welcome to Experts Corner. I am Jawad. In today's program, we are going to take up for discussion two important developments. Afghanistan's soil has once again been used for the terrorist activity, now targeting the Chinese nationals in Tajikistan. We'll be taking the experts' opinion regarding as when pressure from the international community is already increasing on the interim Afghan authorities. This particular incident signifies what are the options when we talk about the regional countries in particular, because there have been strong condemnations that have come forth from the regional countries. In the second segment, we are going to talk about that Indian delegation pulled out of a high-level debate against Pakistan's delegation at the Oxford's Union. And this particular pullout by the Indian delegation happened at the 11th hour. What does that signify? Pakistan's mission, the High Commission in London, in a statement has said that this is an unchallenged victory of Pakistan's narrative. This particular issue for the second segment. Let's begin with the first one. An attack on 26th of November was carried out using the Afghan soil to target the Chinese nationals which were camped in the border area along Afghanistan and Tajikistan. As a result of this particular attack, in which, according to the statement by the Tajik government, the armed drone and firearms were used and 3 Chinese nationals were killed while 1 was wounded. Now, the Tajik government in a statement said the incident marked a dangerous escalation of how the criminal groups operate across the frontier. They've also urged at the same time to the Afghan authorities to fulfill their responsibilities to ensure the safety and security along the Afghanistan and Tajikistan's border. We have also seen a statement that has come from a Chinese embassy in Tajikistan, which has condemned this particular incident in the strongest possible terms and has also demanded a thorough investigation into incident and has also demanded that the perpetrators of this heinous act be brought to justice and they be punished. We have also seen Pakistan expressing solidarity with both China and Tajikistan after this particular incident, where a statement by the Foreign Office says that this use of armed drones actually underlines that what sort of a threat that emanates from Afghanistan soil and also the brazenness of those behind it. We have also seen at the same time a kind of assurance that has come forth from the Afghan Taliban that they have asked assured actually the Tajikistan government that they are ready to cooperate in order to investigate into this particular incident. There is another a portion of that particular statement by the Afghan interim authorities. We'll be talking about that also. After this particular assurance, the main question that arises is whether the Afghan Taliban, the de facto authorities in Afghanistan, be able to ensure that they cooperate with the Tajikistan's government, not only Tajikistan's government, but also alleviate all those long-standing concerns of the regional countries, including China and Pakistan, regarding ensuring safety and security of the foreign nationals in the bordering regions as well, and also not allowing the Afghan soil to be used for any of the terrorist activity. To understand all this, we are honored being joined through the video link by Barrister Fatima Shaheen. She is a senior analyst. Barrister Fatima, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. And later during the course of our conversation, we'll be joined by Mr. Baloch. He is a former ambassador. Let's begin with you, Barrister Fatima. Now, what does this particular attack actually mean when there are a number of countries now involved in this particular single act of terror? Of course, the Chinese nationals have been targeted who were camped over there in Tajikistan. Afghanistan soil has once again been used for this particular heinous act. Strong condemnations have come forth. We have seen in the recent past that particular report by the United Nations Sanctions Monitoring Committee also how there has been freedom of navigation and operation for the terrorist outfits and militant outfits in Afghanistan. After that particular report, the happening of this incident means what?
Thank you for that question, Jawad. I think first of all, I think not only with reference to that particular report, but generally the way we've seen, events actually emancipate. I think time and again, whether it is this attack, whether it was that attack a few days ago, or outside the White House on the National Guards, I think in the US, all of them, one way or the other, actually vindicate and validate Pakistan's stance against terrorism and, its actual one point agenda. That is that it is high time that Afghanistan takes strong and stringent measures to curb the same. Now when we do talk about this, I think what is very important to talk about in this regard also is the fact that this is not the first attack that happened with regards to killing of the Chinese worker. I was just going over this report which suggested that last year as well one Chinese worker was actually killed, that too on the Afghan border. But moving on, when we do talk about this more holistically, Jawad, I think what is very important to see is that, where are we moving towards? What would be the solutions to these issues? And there, I'm afraid there's, little that other than regional cooperation, other than economic sanctions, other than perhaps diplomatic pressures, is something that can do. Now, you also referred about the United Nations Security Council report, Sanctions Committee, and then it's also very important to tell our audience that it's just not the committee which has actually acknowledged how all these terrorism, all that this terrorism is coming in from Afghanistan, but also there have been not one various United Nations Security Council resolutions being passed back dating from the 1990s, time and again acknowledging the fact that how Afghanistan, by actually sheltering terrorists, by training terrorists, is one way or the other also threatening international peace and security. And not only that, there have also been General Assembly resolutions to that effect too. So my concern, looking at this particularly from a legal perspective, would be that what impact, if any, has all these reports, has all these sanctions, has the sanctions committee, like you rightly so mentioned, actually had. Unfortunately, what all this can do is just place perhaps more diplomatic pressure, give more
Barrister Fatima, a
legitimacy to the
very
claims. Yeah.
pertinent point that you have actually raised. I'll come to this particular aspect, the legal aspect. When we talk about these sanctions, these back-to-back reports over of years that have been released regarding how the Afghan Taliban had been hosting, not only hosting, but also giving that particular support and assistance to the terrorist outfits based in Afghanistan. For now, we are honored to be joined through the video link by Mr. G.R. Baloch. He's a former ambassador. Mr. Baloch, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the Experts Corner tonight. We really appreciate that. Mr. Baloch, now, we'll take the stock of what could be the possibilities, what could be the options when it comes to the regional countries. This is a topic, an issue that presses the region so much. We've been talking about it at length in a number of our programs earlier. But looking at this particular tone, which has come from Afghanistan's Foreign Ministry, they have given a reassurance to the Tajikistan government that they are ready to cooperate. Firstly, they have expressed the deep regret. That also says that they are ready to cooperate with the Tajikistan's government when it comes to information exchange, technical cooperation, and joint assessment to find the causes of the incident. I've repeated this word, causes. They have also alluded to a particular fact. As per their statement, what they deem is some sort of a sinister design on the part of those groups which want to create chaos in the region. Firstly, I want your understanding, given the track record of the Afghan Taliban, would they be able to cooperate with any of the government, let alone with the Tajikistan government, when it comes to the severity of such type of incidents happening there?
Well, from my perspective, in fact, we have been discussing, I have been writing, and I've been researching. I think this Kabul regime, I refuse to call it Afghan regime because they just represent that armed group which is in control of Kabul. Afghan people are peaceful people. Afghan people are actually themselves victims of the wrongdoings of this regime. So I think, in my assessment, they have lost all credibility. After Doha Accord,
that's the fact. I seek your pardon for the interjection over here. They've lost the credibility. The Afghan nationals have been facing the suffering and the misery over the last 2 decades, and the kind of, effort they had to put in when the withdrawal of the international troops was happening. We saw people thronged at that particular airport trying to reach for that airplane that was leaving for the United States of America. Taliban losing their credibility, increased international pressure, people in Afghanistan losing faith in how Afghanistan would be governed. Also, the regional countries are losing patience. All these are the stated facts. But these incidents keep recurring. What is the option? What is the solution? What is the way forward?
In fact, no, this incident is much bigger. One, that is taken place on a third country, and for the fourth, the victims are Chinese. One. Second, the kind of sophistication, a drone armed with weapons and grenades. It cannot be without the facilitation of a state actor. I'm not saying A country is involved, B country is involved, although we almost know that who all are active, which are other now nexuses that the Kabul regime or Taliban regime has it in South Asia. So I am more worried about it, that perhaps now the non-state actors have the facilitation, the technical know-how, and even the weapons that they will use all around the region. And that is an alarming situation. One. Second, I think it targets China. It means it is part of that bigger agenda to sabotage CPAC, to sabotage Road and Belt Initiative, to further create confusion around this Central Asia, South Asia region. So I think it's much bigger and sinister than it appears, unless the regional countries, that is all of them, come together and hold the regime in Kabul responsible. I would not go by their platform.
Hold them responsible, how to hold them accountable. It's been over 4 years now since that Kabul takeover by the Afghan Taliban. It was expected at that particular point in time that it is going to be a 2.0 version of the Afghan Taliban. But the fact state of the situation, as far as the expectations of the regional countries is concerned, has been totally in contrast with what was the expectation at that particular point in time. We know for a fact there are a number of forums when it comes to the regional understanding. It's the Moscow format. We have also seen at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization this particular issue being raised, the Afghan Taliban being urged back and forth again that they have to fulfill their responsibility. Not only that, when it comes to the recent happening in Afghanistan, that shooting in Washington, D.C., an Afghan national has been identified as a suspect in that particular thing also. We've also seen President Donald Trump issuing a warning for the Afghan Taliban if they don't hand over Bagram Air Base. Now, as far as the understanding of the international community as a whole is concerned, do you think the understanding when the Western powers are concerned and the regional powers are concerned, they are pretty much in line with each other when it comes to addressing the issue that emanates from Afghanistan soil and how to engage with the Afghan Taliban in that particular context?
I think I have one word for that. The time for the carrot is gone. I think the time to use the stick, that is, all the funding has to dry up. All the diplomatic facilitation by neighboring countries, including our very great friend China, has to react. It has to take action. It has to tell the Taliban that no more investment as long as you support the terrorists which attack our neighbors, our citizens, and jeopardize the peace of South Asia, the peace of Central Asia. Now, in my view, they have lost all legitimacy to be even called as an interim government. They need to either enlarge it, change it, or go home. Whatever it takes for the international community, they must ensure this agenda. Yep.
Right. Let me proceed once again to Barrister Fatima. Barrister Fatima, you were already alluding to the fact that a number of back reports which mention how the Afghan Taliban had been hosting, not only hosting, assisting and supporting of the terrorist outfits based in Afghanistan. This time, the expectation when they took over Kabul back in 2021 was that it's going to be a 2.0 version of themselves. But the fact is that whatever they did as far as ensuring and fulfilling their international obligation that the Afghan soil won't be used against any other country for terrorist purposes, the situation is quite 180-degree opposite to what was the expectation. Now, we understand these are the reports coming in. They give us the findings. When we talk about that Fitna al-Khawarij banned TTP, the numbers are also given, around 5,000 to 6,000 are there. Now, also about other terrorist outfits which are operating from Afghanistan soil. Okay, we get the reports, we've got the facts, we've got the stats. Is there any sort of a mechanism that such committees, based on these facts and based on these reports, have got any sort of a mechanism that could actually recommend any sort of a concrete action on the ground to ensure that the Afghan Taliban somehow fulfill their international obligation? Is there anything of that sort
Thank you,
present?
Jawad, for that question. Sure, thank you. So basically, Jawad, the thing is that I think you rightly pointed towards something that, what is that level of implementation? Now, theoretically, if we talk about this, the fact that, anything is taken up in United Nations Security Council and a resolution is passed there on, the sanctions committee kind of kicks in, the kind of action that would then follow would be something from it being merely an economic sanction to it there being perhaps more stricter diplomatic measures being taken into account. Then also, in even worse cases, we've seen a military force being authorized, especially if something is considered to be a threat to international peace, which in my opinion here, given the fact that,
Talk about the economic sanctions. When we talk about the economic sanctions, I seek your pardon for the interjection over here, that this particular fact actually makes me a lot curious. When the economic sanctions are imposed, of course they are going to be imposed on an authority which is over there that calls itself up there for the governance of that particular territory. Now, over the last 2 years, we have seen that very devastation, the damage and the scale of it happening in Afghanistan. Now, the kind of misery and the suffering the Afghan people in general had to go through, if the economic sanctions are imposed on a regime or a de facto authority, don't you think this is ultimately going to have a trickle-down effect on to the suffering? It is going to exacerbate that particular suffering when it comes to the Afghan people in general. So is there any alternative mechanism in order to hold them accountable?
I think you raised a very valid point here, because when we talk about, that is what I was about to come to, Jawad, that when we talk about all these sanctions, what is very important to remember is that economic is just one thing that you've talked about. Even if aid is reduced, and like you must have remembered that, when we talk about Australia passed this very interesting kind of a sanction law which said that those Taliban leaders who are going to commit any kind of human rights violations, especially against women, girls, and minorities, they are going to place sanctions on them. So economic sanction is just one way of addressing this issue. There might be others. They can be enforcing military action, they can be reducing aid, they can be imposing human rights sanctions on those Taliban leaders who are actually committing the same. If I take you back into history, you would be remembering that when US left Afghanistan back in 2021, they actually froze the Taliban leaders' assets. I don't remember the exact figures, but a very substantial amount of their
dollars at that
financial
particular
assets
point
were
in
actually
time.
frozen.
Yeah.
And then they can also impose travel bans. So the way you deal with it would be different. It doesn't necessarily have to be economic sanctions, but it can vary depending on the kind of resolution that is actually passed.
I get your point, Barrister Fatima. I'll have to proceed towards Mr. G.R. Baloch. Mr. G.R. Baloch, now, this particular statement by Pakistan's Foreign Office that talks about the use of armed drones. Let me quote that excerpt, that the use of armed drones in this incident underlines the gravity of the threat emanating from Afghanistan and the brazenness of those behind it. You were of the view now the stick has to be used when it comes to dealing or engaging with the de facto authorities in Afghanistan. Over $700 billion worth of NATO caliber weapons have been left after the international troops were withdrawn. We've seen some sort of debate happening within the United States of America also, but the fact is those NATO caliber weapons are available very handy at the hands of those terrorist outfits there in Afghanistan. They are using it. against the regional countries, how could those NATO caliber weapons be possibly retrieved, even if any sort of strategy based on using a stick against the Afghan Taliban is used?
See, when I'm saying stick, it's not necessarily a kinetic military action. What I'm saying is kinetic stick, which means the amount, I think about 60 plus million every month are given to Taliban by the US government. They must dry up. They should stop and tell them that till the time you hand over all the weapons which NATO left, we won't give you a penny. They'll become penniless.
This particular thing which Mr. Baloch was already referring to, this issue of the availability of NATO caliber weapons at the hands of the militant outfits so readily. Now, more than $7 billion worth NATO caliber weapons have been left over in Afghanistan. There are back-to-back reports again from the United Nations, number of reports which are presented to the United Nations Secretary General, that how these NATO caliber weapons are so frequently being used in the terrorist activities and that terrorism that actually emanates from Afghanistan's soil. And this also brings us to question as to if these NATO caliber weapons are concerned. Of course, everything has got a certain shelf life. Of course, these NATO caliber weapons would have also got a certain shelf life. After they've expired, is there any sort of another supply that is happening? That brings us to raise this particular very serious question. And if that supply is happening, where from it is happening and where from that particular financing is happening, the international community really needs to look into that particular matter. At the same time, Mr. G.R. Baloch, unfortunately, we lost the connection. Former ambassador joining us through the video link. Thank you very much for taking time out for Experts Corner tonight. Really appreciate that. That brings us to the end of the first segment. In the segment, we are going to talk about Indian delegation pulling at the 11th hour from a high-level debate against Pakistan. Pakistan terms it an unchallenged victory. Also, says that it exposes the weakness of India's narrative. Right up for discussion in the second segment, for which we'll be joined by new guests. For that, stay tuned. Welcome back to Experts Corner. In the second segment, we are going to talk about Indian delegation pulling out at the last minute from a high-level debate at the Oxford Union against Pakistan's delegation. And this particular pullout happened at the very last minute. And now the invitations of this particular debate had been issued quite well in time. And not only invitations, but also the confirmation happened from both the sides quite well in advance. Why did Indian delegation pull out from this particular high-level debate against Pakistan's delegation? We'll be talking about could be the possible motives behind this particular sudden pullout by the Indian delegation. Also, this particular, as per the statement by the Pakistan's High Commission in London, talks about this particular issue or the motion, which is this House believes India's policy towards Pakistan is a populist strategy sold as security policy, unquote. Let me quickly bring in our panelists to discuss this particular sudden pullout by the Indian delegation on this high-level debate at the Oxford Union. Barrister Fatima Shaheen through the video link. We are honored to be joined through the video link by Mr. Moosa Harraj. He is president of Oxford Union and organizer of Pakistan-India debate. Mr. Harraj, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Barrister Fatima, what's your understanding? Why do you think from such a high-level debate, which was already agreed to, there was confirmation sent by both sides at the last minute, why would the Indian delegation pull out from this particular high-level debate?
Thank you, Jawad, for that question. I think I would want to add to what the previous speaker was saying before I come to your question. I think this Oxford Union Society itself, it has a world-renowned, very good reputation when it comes to talking of issues both of national as well as of international importance. And when we do talk about such talks, what is also very important to note is that, schedules for such talks and such debates are given way in advance. So definitely, in my opinion, it is extremely deliberate and definitely very very unprofessional to let go of this when the Pakistani delegation, was there fully prepared to put forward their own arguments in line with facts and, of course, international law. Now, to address your question, Jawad, I think what is very important to talk about here is I think the facts speak for themselves. Where have we actually seen India defend its stance, be it in terms of its policy, be it in terms of its military, so-called military assertiveness on any intellectual or, for that matter, any international forum? And very frankly, I wouldn't be surprised to see that India very conveniently backed out the last minute. I think what is very important to talk about here is more on the merits of this very debate. It says that, it has more of a populist agenda as opposed to, and that populist agenda in itself is something which is supposed to be, which is sold as a security policy. So I,
This
for
particular
one,
motion, Barrister Fatima, I see your partner for the interjection over it. That is really an interesting thing that I want your opinion about. This House believes India's policy towards Pakistan is a populist strategy sold as a security policy. But there are two words that you've already used when it comes to Indian approach: a deliberate approach and unprofessional approach. What sort of optics does it create for Indians internationally when it comes to such forums, the credibility of which, of course, stand for so many years now, and pulling out at the last minute? What does sort of a message does it actually send out to the international community? Barrister Fatma, if you allow me, let me proceed towards Mr. Moosa Harraj. We are once again reconnected to him. I'll come back to you as well. Mr. Moosa Harraj, what does this pull out by Indian side actually mean for the Oxford Union? Please go ahead.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you so much for bringing me to your show. Look, the Oxford Union is the world's most prestigious and the best speaking society. And as the president of the Oxford Union, I organized this debate during my presidency. So in that, the union has a history that whenever we organize a debate, whenever we do a debate, the world talks about it. And it was very important for me in my presidency to have motions, to have debates which highlight issues which the mainstream narrative does not do justice to. So in that spirit, in about end of June, so nearly 5 months ago, I started the organization of this debate. And the motion behind of the debate was that India's India's policy towards Pakistan is completely made to pander to the electorate. And we see that in India, every time there's an election, every time Mr. Modi is down in the polls, every time his party is facing a tough time, they start the rants about Pakistan being a terrorist state, and the other times they forget about it. So I wanted to make sure that this narrative was done, because in a lot of the Western world, in a lot of the mainstream media around the West, the image of Pakistan is not as positive, and I think our country got a lot of flack for that. So it's very crucial for me that we organize this. Look, so when the debate was organized, everyone, I as president sent out the invitations. I as president organized the debate. I as president chose the motion. Everyone was sent this in June. They knew the date of the debate. The debate date was set as the 27th of November in around sometime in July. So they knew the date, they knew the topic, they knew the location, and a lot of these people confirmed to us. Now, I don't know what goes around people's heads before they pull out, but what happened was we had some people from the Indian delegation who pulled out, and then we had an esteemed Pakistani delegation that was meant to be coming. And because of this, the Pakistani delegation was meant to be coming as well. And because of the Indian delegation pulling out, we could not have the Pakistani delegation come either. So then I had a choice.
Mr. Moosa Harraj, I see your partner for the interjection over here. We are pressed with time. Could you give us an understanding, after this sudden pull-out by the Indian side, what are the future prospects? Is the Oxford Union again going to consider any sort of an Indian delegation for a further future debate against whoever it is? Or are there going to be any sort of bars when it comes to giving them this particular forum to talk about whatever they want?
So, look, from our perspective, we invite everyone because it is very important for good debate that you have people from both sides. And despite the delegation pulling out, I, as president, made the choice to still continue on with the debate. And the debate happened last night. It was a members' debate, so we had students speaking in it. I, as president, opened the case for Pakistan. I was the lead speaker and led the Pakistan team and gave my speech. And Alhamdulillah, we won. We won by 2/3. It's very rare. The Oxford Union, the Oxford audience, voted 2/3 to affirm that India's response to Pakistan is a populist strategy, sold a security policy. That's a huge statement that was made from the Oxford Union. And this statement that was made and voted on by 2/3 of the Oxford Union is now echoing all around the world. That's crucial. Now, as far as your question about Indian speakers is concerned, look, we will organize debates in the future as well. And it's important you have people from both sides. It's important everyone is welcome, because it's very important. If you do not bring them to places like the Oxford Union, where they can...
You gave them an opportunity. It was they who pulled out of it. Even if you provide them a future opportunity, what's the guarantee that they're going to sit before the Pakistani delegation and are going to face the facts and the truth? Perhaps that's the reason. When you talk of how the overwhelming support, the 2/3 support that you've got, I mean, given that particular fact also, please go ahead. What will be the guarantee in future?
Look, my presidency is ending in 10 days, and it is the president who decides who to invite or not. But I understand what you're saying, because this is against the spirit of debate.
Rules of the game. What are the rules of the game? Once, for example, if you give me an opportunity and at the last minute I pull out, wouldn't it send a very wrong message? And this particular act, wouldn't it be considered an unprecedented? Would the Oxford Union give me another opportunity to talk at that particular forum after once I pulled at the last minute without any concrete reason at all?
Look, again, it's which speaker comes is completely up to the discretion of the president, right? In my term is ending in about a week. In my term, in my presidency, my focus is that if someone is invited and they reject our invitation, or they drop out last minute and they cancel last minute when all preparations are done, unless you have some emergencies which happen, which everyone understands. But if people cancel, drop out last minute, my perspective is that these people do not want to engage in open and truthful, honest discussion. And as such, in my presidency, I invite them. I don't know about the others, what they do in the future.
Do you think the political pressure from the government of India, Bharatiya Janata Party, had to do with this particular sudden pullout of this particular delegation from India?
I can't talk for what pressure there was, but I think look, it's very clear, right? I think the Indian government has a position which it cannot defend, right? It cannot defend it.
Barrister Fatima, now, you already mentioned of this particular motion, the House believes India's policy towards Pakistan is a populist strategy sold as security policy. You were about to say something. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Jawad. I think what the previous speaker said, I couldn't agree with him more, because I think what is very important to then talk about here is the fact that when you don't have anything to defend, when you don't have anything to project to the world, what you can do is very easily escape. And that is what we've seen India do. You must be remembering that even in the ASEAN summit, Modi didn't come there because he knew that there could be a possible, one-on-one with Trump, where once again Pakistan's win could be rubbed onto him. So when it comes to talking about issues which India doesn't want to take up, India doesn't want to confront, India doesn't want to defend, or rather, I would also say it has nothing to defend, it very conveniently, pulls out of the way. Talking about this particular motion, I think it is very aptly put, and it is very aptly describes the way Indian politics, anti-Muslim, anti-Pakistan rhetoric, the entire warmongering narrative.
I seek your pardon for the interjection over here. We are actually pressed with time. There's so much to talk about this particular topic. It's very interesting. I'll come back to you if there is a little bit of time to have your understanding. We are once again reconnected with Mr. Moosa Harraj. Mr. Moosa Harraj, now you already talked of the support, 2/3 support. That is quite an overwhelming. Despite the fact, if I'm correct on this, that the members of the Oxford Union, Indians outnumber Pakistanis in that particular union. Am I correct with that particular thing? If that is the case, how could there be a 2/3 support to that particular thing? And what does that actually indicate about the facts and fiction when it comes to the comparison between Pakistan's narrative and India's narrative?
Gee, look, this is what I was saying before it cut out. So the reason I think why we were again saying they dropped out is because the Indian case is very indefensible. It's very easy for these people to go on Arnab Goswami or other these anchor shows who are friendly with the Modi regime where they're not questioned. But it's very difficult when they come to the Oxford Union, where they are questioned, they are held to account for what they said, they are held to account for what they did. Their propaganda is exposed and it's questioned, and it's very different then. Now, yes, it's true. India has a huge population, and there's a lot more Indian students at Oxford than there are Pakistani students. There are a lot more Indian members of the Oxford Union than there are Pakistani members of the Oxford Union. But the case I made as well, which I think, and even some Indians voted on the motion, the case I made is that if you light, and this is what I said in my speech, if you light a fire across the border, if you target a whole country because of their religion, then that fire is not going to only stay across the border. That fire will come inside your country. That fire will come inside your country. It will burn your freedom of press. It will burn your independent courts. It will burn your democratic and soul of the nation. And especially pertinent when India itself has over 200 million Muslims. And that is a point I made, which a lot of Indians in the audience even agreed with. And that is why the motion carried 2/3, because it is so crucial. You cannot, this politics of fear, politics of hatred, is a politics that we must stand up and reject around the world. And that is crucial. And that is what the members of the Oxford Union voted for.
The politics of hate must be rejected. Mr. Moosa Harraj, President of Oxford Union, organizer of Pakistan-India debate, thank you very much for taking time out for Experts Corner tonight. Really appreciate that. Barrister Fatima, your closing comments, you already referred to a very interesting fact that even Indian Prime Minister did not attend those meetings where he saw President Trump coming. He only went to a recent forum where he ensured where President Trump was not present. And also you were about to say regarding as to how this populist strategy has been used as a security policy against Pakistan by India.
Right. Thank you, Jawad. I'll just make this very short because I do understand your press for time. So when we do talk about this, I think generally you would agree with me when I say that when it comes to India's operational strategy, that is unfortunately very heavily politicized. And, as analyst, or for that matter, as any person, I think as an objective bystander, it's very important to make that line of distinction between a country's policy, its operational strategy, and the way it then uses a military and asserts the same too. We have seen time and again that when it comes to India, it has used that populist, that nationalist sentiment, banking upon, of course, being very anti-Muslim, being very anti-Pakistan, particularly, especially when it comes to winning votes, especially when it comes to energizing its electoral base. And that is something that we did see very recently in the Bihar elections as well. In addition to that, something that I would want to say is that, when it comes to such forums, I feel it is very important that countries like India are then exposed, because I think this is something that the world notice when you don't go to such forums, when you don't talk about such issues, that too amongst educated youth, and that too in a society which has a world-renowned reputation of raising regional and national issues of importance. I think it goes to speak a lot for yourself. So if I was to conclude this, I think in the larger and more
unfortunately, we're short of time. I seek your pardon for the injection over here. I have to cut you short over here. I seek your pardon for that one as well. Barrister Fatima Shaheen, senior analyst, joining us through the video link. Thank you very much for taking time out for today. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's Experts Corner. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.